Redditors who work in retail, what's the saddest thing someone ever returned? Customers regularly come in with large amounts of baby supplies returns. They get the wrong gender items or duplicates. An older woman came in with a cartload, so I asked about the new baby. She slowly and through tears explained that her only child and grandbaby had died during childbirth. A man returned a Christmas tree one year. He was pretty bummed out, and when I asked him about it he told me that he was supposed to have visitation this Christmas but his ex refused to let him see his kids. I still think about that guy. I hope he gets his kids this year. Power lift chair, never used, delivered 3 days after her dad died. I used to be a manager for Disney store. We had a regular old man come in with his wife regularly. Super cute couple. I mean, matching outfits, holding hands, just cute as could be. We used to sell these huge stuffed animals, like, ginormous. The couple came in about once a week and would just walk around, laugh and smile, buy things here and there. One night he came in on his own and bought one of these gigantic Mickeys we had. It was $300 I think. He was so excited. He told us all about how he was going to take her out to dinner and it would be sitting there on the bed to surprise her when they got home. Anyway, 2 days later he walked back in, carrying the gigantic Mickey Mouse plush to return it. He had bought it to surprise her for her 75th birthday. She passed away in her sleep the day before her birthday. He thanked us and said goodbye, and that he would not be coming back because our store reminded him too much of his wife. We found out he passed away a week later. It was just 7 days from the day his wife passed. Someone returned a lot of baby clothes to us one day. Her sister had given birth to stillbirth twins. It was so sad. 2 middle-aged ladies, apparently sisters, were having the time of their life in my department. One bought a ton of assorted housewares, including some relatively inexpensive but very distinctive colored glass vases. We chatted throughout. They were fun. I kept thinking how much of a real joy it had been to deal with them. The next week, she came back to return the vases. When I asked the reason for the return, expecting the color size didn't work like I expected, she embarrassedly explained that impulsive purchases were a problem in her manic states. Not a return, but I worked in a jewelry store and the saddest sale we ever had was a lay-by. Guy had this ring on lay-by for 12 months but died in a car accident. His parents came in and picked up the ring so his girlfriend could keep it. Don't think she had any idea he was going to propose. I worked at Toys R Us in the late 90s, before there was really a separate baby store and we sold all the cribs and clothing, etc. Someone returned carts full of baby items from a registry. An older man came in on behalf of the mother because the baby was stillborn. We accepted all items at full price with no receipts and gave back cash. Family certainly didn't need hundreds of dollars in store credit. I work at a liquor store in a college town, and one night some younger guy was returning a keg barrel, only it was still half full. I jokingly asked the guy if it was a crappy party or something along those lines, and he responded with, "Yeah, it was a party for one of our friends who died the day of the party." A guy came into a jewelry store and wanted help to find his wife something nice. Throughout the process he told me that they were having problems and he thought they were going to split up. He was lovely, but slightly weird for whatever reason. Anyhow, he bought her a diamond ring and left. Exactly 2 days later he returned, sad, and asked if he could have a refund as she had split up with him. Turned out their problems were about how much money he was spending, and so she wasn't exactly thrilled he had gone and bought her diamonds. I work at hardware store. About a week ago we had someone return a jack which had failed and snapped shut on his arm. His forearm was completely shattered and I think he lost his job. I work at a thrift store and it's not exactly returning, but we get a lot of sad donations. Like we got a father suicide recording made for his 2 sons. It's like 2 hours long. I listened to the whole thing. Also there's a guy who comes in every week and donates 1 box of stuff. I asked him if he was moving one time and he said, "No, these were my wife's. She's passed now." I'm never asking someone why they're donating ever again. A guy was returning baby formula and he was looking pretty down. I asked him how his day was and he said that he has been having a long day and that he's been having a long month too. I thought he just had a baby, so maybe he just got the wrong formula. I asked if he just had a baby and he said he used to have a baby. I told him I was sorry and he said it was okay. There were a few minutes of silence and he said he was a fun little guy. I was working at a large pet store in the tropical fish department. One busy weekend, a very well-dressed, rather snobby woman came in and bought 6 baby angelfish, each about the size of a dime, plus the fins. The store I worked in was inside a huge high-end shopping mall, so we had a holding service where we would bag up fish, cash the customer out, and float the fish in their bags in a warm tank until the customer was finished all their shopping and ready to leave for home. As a matter of course, I offered to hold this lady's baby angelfish. She said she was all good and left. We thought nothing of it, since many of our customers came in from outside the mall just to stop at the pet store and didn't bother visiting the rest of the mall. 4 or 5 hours later, she stormed back into the store demanding a manager and a refund. She was shaking the bag in our faces for emphasis, yelling that her gorgeous angels were all dead. On close inspection, we discovered that the silly bee had put the poor fish in her car, presumably so she didn't need to carry them while she shopped for other things or returned to the store to pick them up. Unfortunately, because it was January and the temperature outside was about -15 degrees Celsius, the tiny babies had frozen to death. She simply couldn't wrap her head around the idea that tropical fish cannot withstand freezing temperatures. Even when we took a tiny fish out of the bag and showed her that not only had ice formed on top of the once 84 degrees Fahrenheit water, but the dime-sized fish was actually frozen stiff. Some people just shouldn't have pets. Not strictly retail or a return, but at the cinema I used to work for, someone booked an entire gold class lounge so they could propose to their girlfriend alone. This cost thousands of dollars. He had a special video made up to play after the trailers, the whole 9 yards. A day or two before the big day he called to cancel his booking. His girlfriend had dumped him. I work in a clothing store and a gentleman came in with his wife because he had lost 80 pounds and needed new clothes because his old ones wouldn't fit. Obviously, I congratulated and jested that he must be working out every day to lose that kind of weight. He replied that cancer was the cause of the weight loss and not exercise as I so jointly suggested. He understood when I apologized and still bought clothes. Returned her husband's replacement razors. I asked her if he was unsatisfied and maybe wanted another kind style. Nope. He died earlier before his birthday to receive them. She started crying and I just leaned over the counter to console her. Jared Allen bought like 15 families Christmas at the Target I worked for. I mean like big ticket stuff for everyone like TV, iPad, etc. It was something like 15k total. The next day, since I was the security manager, I was screamed at by 8 of those families that wanted to do returns for cash, saying I was ruining their children's Christmas. I made it to my lunch break before I camped out. There's an easy enough solution for that. Tell them that you'd be happy to process their returns and that the credit will be returned to the account that was used for the purchase. Once I was at a pawn shop looking for a new amp when a guy came in wanting to return an engagement ring he'd bought the day before. He said he'd caught his girl cheating when he went home early to surprise and propose to her. Of course, they wouldn't just exchange it or give him his money back, but they did offer to buy it back from him for way less than he paid. He ended up selling it back to them for, from what I could tell from what I could make out of what he was saying, much less than he'd bought it for. Poor guy was extremely distraught over his whole ordeal. This kid came in by himself and was looking for some socks or booties for his weenie dog. He was telling me about how he got her and how now her legs didn't work anymore, so he didn't want her getting hurt while dragging. He paid with a bunch of pocket change and ran out the door. A couple days later he came back in and just handed me the socks back. I worked at a Subway for a year, and we shared the building with a jewelry store. It was a small business and we always made a salad for the owners, free of charge. One day a customer at their store is incredibly enthusiastic about buying an engagement ring for their so. He told the entire Subway crew how he met her after his mother died, and that they've been seeing each other for almost 5 years. He kept saying how he was happy that he found someone who makes him truly happy and that all the challenges in his life were necessary for him to find true love. He came back a few days later. The light from his eyes was gone. He was returning the ring. I talked to the owners later that day after he left, and apparently she broke it off with him because she fell in love with someone else. It was really sad to watch. I work at a grocery store where someone returned a box of crackers. She said that she doesn't actually eat the crackers, she just licks the flavoring off of them. This particular box did not have enough seasoning for her, so she licked the crackers and then brought them back. I went behind the return counter one day and saw a pair of boots with a damaged slip on it. They looked fine, so I asked my co-worker why she damaged them out of the system, and she said a girl died in them. Apparently the girl's mother bought them for her when she was sick in the hospital. She died and the mother returned them. Someone returned a prescription dog food. I knew what happened as soon as she approached the counter. Her dog passed away. He was very old and sick. She broke down in front of me. I used to work for an online retailer that sold baby items. Think baby memory books, clothes, toys, growth charts, etc. Someone was returning a baby memory box where you can store items like their baby shoes and teeth for posterity. When I asked what the reason for the return was, she said it was because they had lost the baby. You could tell in her voice how hard that was to say. I was fresh out of college, childless, and had no idea how to react. Fortunately, that was the only time I ran into that during my time there. A set of Mr. and Mrs. pillows. She had a tan line where her engagement ring was, a black eye, and her neck in a brace. It turns out the fiancé was abusive, but he didn't show his true colors until about a month before the wedding when he thought he had her trapped. Luckily she got out alive. I felt so bad for her. Not so much a return, but an old man came into the photo lab I worked at to pick up his photos. He has dropped them off months ago and he had no ticket. Turns out his house burned down and he lost everything. We helped him find the photos. All he had were photos of a grey cat sleeping or sitting by a window. He cried like a baby when he saw the photos. He was old and living alone. The only thing he cared about was that cat and it had died in the fire. I forgot to charge him for the photos. My bad. This happened a little over a year ago. A frail old woman came in to return an unopened box of a very expensive brand of cologne. She didn't say much past "I need to return this," and me being the people person I am, tried to jokingly mention did her husband not like the brand. She sighed and said it was his birthday present, and when I went to visit him in hospice to give it to him, he had already passed away. I was speechless and profusely apologized and ended up talking to her about my mom passing away a few months prior to this, and we ended up crying together in the store and talking for an hour and a half. She left with a smile on her face, but the initial reaction still haunts my dreams. Not my story, but my supervisor shared a story with me about an old woman who placed a large order to redecorate her and her husband's house. We're a store that mostly sells general home items, but also have a large selection of furniture. She had selected several $1000s worth of merchandise. A lot of it was special order, so it was being sold non-returnable. The woman ended up passing away shortly after everything was delivered, and the husband couldn't deal with all the new stuff. He wanted to keep all of their old things exactly the way they were. So my supervisor made an exception to have it all returned refunded. Somewhat similarly, someone created a registry for their upcoming baby. They had a ton of baby stuff picked out. Unfortunately, the husband had later called in to say his wife had miscarried and the baby didn't make it. The wife was okay, but in no condition to talk on the phone. So again, my supervisor allowed everything to be returned. No questions asked. Someone returned a get well soon card. I worked at a vitamin store. The most commonly bought item were weight loss control pills that had ephedra in them. Zinedrine and the store brand equivalent were the most popular of those, next to hydroxycut. Our store sent memos that due to recent problems with the products we would be honoring full refunds even if the product was opened and mostly used. The people returning them would tweak to their follicles, shaking, sputtering, saying I see, can't take this stuff in anymore. It's making my heart pound to F fast. And I'm just like, okay, it's okay. A woman came up to the return desk with 3 shopping carts and a fistful of long receipts. She explained that she was a compulsive shopper and that as part of her therapy she was supposed to return everything to face how much she had been spending. It took me over an hour to ring up the hundreds of items she had, all new in box, all with receipts. When it was all done it came up to nearly $800, and a lot of the things had been bought long enough ago that they had clearances out, so her return was pennies on the dollar. Someone returned a graduation cake because their son was killed in an accident the night before. It was heartbreaking. Back when I had just started college, I worked at Barnes & Noble. One night I was working a shift at the cash register. A lady came up with a handful of books and a stuffed llama. I told her the llama was really cute and she was like, "I know, isn't it great?" She checked out and walked out to her car, where her husband and son were waiting. 5 minutes later, she came back inside. She said she had to return the llama and I expressed surprise and asked why. She said, "My husband wants my son to have a more American animal, like a lion." I worked in a plus-size clothing store. I helped a woman pick out a wardrobe for a 2-week cruise that she was going on with her boyfriend of 6 months. A few weeks later, she returned all the clothes unworn. I asked her if the cruise was cancelled. No, it turns out that there never was a cruise, or a relationship. This guy was dating her as a prank, and he and his buddies schemed to see what they could get the girl to believe. He thought he was in love with her and wanted to move in together soon. His parting words to her were, "Like anyone would really date a fat butt like you." I helped a grandpa-to-be pick out some baby clothes for his daughter who was expecting twins. He returned them a couple weeks later because they died. He started crying as I was processing the return. I used to work for Nordstrom back when they had a forever return policy. A girl in my department got wrongly fired, so her whole family returned years worth of merchandise. Some co-workers told me it was over 20k worth of product. A woman came in the pet store I work night shifts at and bought a ton of stuff for her new rat, and about 2 days later she returned everything, including the rat. She put him in a soda box turned on the short end. He was coated in feces and urine. I took him in the back and cleaned him up, but God, I don't know that I've ever felt so bad for an animal that I really have never taken an interest to. Worked at a clothing store that was popular with teens. A spoiled tween came to the register, accompanied by her mom, and laid out easily $500 worth of clothing. Probably around 20 plus tops, 5 pairs of jeans, a jacket, shorts, sandals, etc. As I'm ringing up this absurd amount of items, another girl, I assume the first girl's friend, joins the tween and her mom. As she approaches, I realize the friend must have recently underwent chemo. She was probably a tween as well, completely bald and frail. She approaches the girl and her mom with a single tank top. "Friend, is it okay if I get this?" Mom, "Sure, but Susan needs to put back one of her items." Daughter, "No way." Mom, profanity-laden verbal assault on her mother ensues. The mom decides to purchase about $500 of clothes for the daughter, while the cancer-stricken friend returns the $10 tank top. I continue despondently ringing everything up, hating the world. This is Diamond SpongeBob. He only appears every 200,000 videos. Subscribe for good luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.